Hello everyone, welcome back to Touch the Fire Twice. I'm Joshua and I'm here today to do a first impressions haul overview of 7 fall autumn candles from Bath & Body Works White Barn Candle Company. But first, if you're new to Touch the Fire Twice, welcome. My mission here is to share my love and passion for fine home fragrance as an enthusiast, an educator, and a reviewer to inspire you to increase your own fragrance knowledge and understanding, ultimately enhancing the scent memories that you create. If you want to learn more about what I do, why I do it, how I do it, you can check out my website at TouchTheFireTwice.com and follow me over on Instagram, also at TouchTheFireTwice. But for now, let's dig into fall. So I've been reviewing home fragrance here on this channel for over 11 years now, and this is by far the earliest that Bath & Body Works has launched their fall collections. So historically, let's talk, in the Touch the Fire Twice history, 2012, 2013, I was doing fall videos usually the first week of July. So I think maybe like July 6th through the 12th, right after the 4th of July. And that's when I had access to a test store, and they were very, very particular with how they did test launches. And so they would launch a full fall, like 6 collections, 20 to 30 cents in the test stores. And then, 6 to 8 weeks later, fall would launch nationwide in all Bath & Body Works White Barn Candle Company stores. And so that was not unheard of, but even then that was early July that you start to see some fall scents. Now the past few years, we've seen them inching earlier and earlier across all of the stores, not even test stores, just across all stores. And it was usually a small preview of maybe a collection of 4 or 6 or even a transitional collection that was clearly leaning into fall, not exactly summer, but was not necessarily the fall classics, would come out in maybe July. But now they have launched in all stores, as soon as the semi-annual sale is ending late June, they have launched at least 4 fall collections. And even if this is an early fall preview, that is a lot of fall product. I'm not complaining, but I'm sure there are folks out there that are like, look, it's been 4 days officially into summer solstice and there are no new summer candles Bath & Body Works. It is primarily fall that is going up in the floor sets and some non-season specific candles as well when it comes to 1 or 2 of the collections that are out there. Not complaining, I love fall. I think most of us love fall. I guess I'm here for it. And so needed to do this haul and overview. I will say, I tend to, as if you watch the channel frequently, I tend to dig into the large hauls with Bath & Body Works. I go very in-depth, which is why they're not just a haul. They really are a haul and first impressions or even a full-on in-depth sniff review of these candles, whether they are post or pre-burn. And then I often don't go into the individual candle reviews on them, going in-depth, because I kind of have talked about them for the most part and there's not much more to add. I really enjoy fall candles especially. I enjoy many of these and I'd like to do a little bit more in-depth on them without making a 35-minute video. So hopefully you're seeing this now and it is a shorter video than my normal hauls. But all that to say, I do plan to do in-depth sniff and comparison reviews on a handful of these beyond just the, hey, here's my first impressions overview on them. So with that said, let's dig right in. I will just talk about the candles I have. There are others in these collections that I didn't like, I do like, I may still purchase, but rather than go full on all of those like I've done in some of my haul videos in past seasons, I'll stick primarily to the ones that I did purchase. So I purchased these during the sort of flash coupon sale that Bath & Body Works offered at the end of semi-annual sale, where it was 5 off of 25, 10 off of 40, or 30 off of 100. 30 off of 100, that's pretty good. You don't see 30% coupons nearly ever at this point. And if you can make that transaction tight to right around 100 without spending way over, you're getting a nice 30% off. And with the 10 off candle sale, that makes it pretty decent, where $16.95 or $15.95 by themselves isn't great. Even a 20% coupon isn't great on top of that. But you get 30% off of 100, it makes it work to where getting 6 or 7 candles, you're gonna pay, I ended up paying somewhere around $11 each for most of these, which is pretty solid nowadays, especially with the price hikes they've had. So first, we'll talk about the Neutrals collection. Neutrals collection seems to be a big hit, and as I said before, I'm really into it. They tend to experiment a little. Sometimes they'll throw classic fragrances in there. Sometimes they'll try new things. They'll do some repackages. They are seasonally appropriate, but there's usually some that are off-season in there as well. So it really is similar to their core collection, but somewhat experimental, kind of an ingredients-esque collection, and there's been some great scents that have come out in them, and I'm happy to see it continuing. So let's first start with Salted Amber and Vetiver. Notes on this one: Salted Amber, fresh orange flower, and rich vetiver. Getting my nose on this. This is really pretty. This is not fall, and interestingly enough, you hear vetiver and amber, and those are typically heavy, deep, musky, earthy base notes. Maybe vetiver is not always base, but certainly amber typically is a nice deep base note. This does not read as heavy, intense, choke you out at all. It does read sort of as fine fragrance. It is sophisticated, delicate, not quite, I wouldn't say feminine necessarily. It's fresh, clean. There's certainly more going on than just what they say in here. I'm happy they call out the orange flower because certainly you do get a floral in here. A soft, powdery floral, not overwhelmingly so. Like it doesn't read, again, spring. It truly is a-seasonal in that sense. Not quite shower fresh. Happily, not your typical Bath & Body Works body care. So sometimes they do candles and their fragrances where you're like, oh, this could be a signature body care collection. This one is not, in my mind, along those lines. Also could be, to some noses, kind of laundry-esque. When it comes to the notes, so that salted amber, the salted anything as an adjective is a little bit tricky in fine fragrance. I haven't done enough research to fully understand what salted means or what that does. I imagine it's going to be, an accord that kind of evokes either a sharpness, or a minerality, or a kind of dryness to a fragrance. And amber, ambergris is going to be, it can be golden, warm, leathery, honey, musky, animalic, rich, deep, dark. And there's a bit of that there, but it's soft. It's really a soft amber, and it's not overly cozy and enveloping like amber sometimes can be, and sometimes in a good way. It really just is a gentle, clean amber. And vetiver, that vetiver grass sometimes gets earthy and green and fresh, sometimes hay-like. And I don't really call out a lot of vetiver in here, which I really enjoy. I thought maybe this would be similar to the wild vetiver candle here that was released in a failed forest collection, and then just in, I think, another failed collection of Bath & Body Works that was just straightforward single note scents like lavender, vetiver, etc. And I don't think it's too similar to that, but I suppose there's a little bit of that sweetness from the vetiver that comes through that reminds me of that candle. So maybe we'll do an in-depth sniff comparison review on this one. I have to get my nose on it once it's burning. But overall, it's something that I think on first sniff could be considered, just straightforward and clean and fresh. But it is quite sophisticated. This is something that we get, I think, in this Neutrals collection is we get where Bath & Body Works is playing with some really sophisticated, not just the types of fragrances and scents, but even just the build. It seems like there's more attention to detail put into some of these. Then we go to perhaps a love or hate for a lot of folks based on at least name alone, and that is apple and charcoal. Notes of sweet red apple and smoked charcoal. Getting my nose on it, I love it. I will say, I think this is misnamed. I think they're leaning too heavily on the charcoal as a way to make this collection more, the leather brandy, the oud, the coffee whiskey, leaning more truly gender neutral so that, a straight man who has, some toxic masculinity who doesn't want to buy a cute looking candle would feel comfortable buying an apple candle because it has charcoal. I don't know if that's why they have charcoal in here, because I'm not getting a lot of it. I know some folks have said they smell charcoal in this. I smell something interesting in here, but it's not smoky, and it's not like a charcoal briquette, and it's not even just like a smoked apple wood. The main thing I'll say on this, the apple is the exact apple that we get in Cider Lane. I'm a huge stan for Cider Lane. It is that really authentic, maybe a mixture of green and like a golden delicious sweet apple. And of course, Cider Lane has that heavy hit of that thick caramel. This does not have that, but it is the exact same apple, almost as sweet, but thankfully, missing that caramel factor from the fragrance. But it is like, 60% of Cider Lane for me. Very, very straightforward, that same apple. And then, as opposed to charcoal, I'm getting more so, I'd say a bit of a spice. I want to say like cinnamon, maybe cinnamon bark. There's a bit of a sharpness to it that it's not just your typical, don't think apple cinnamon, like a pumpkin apple or a million other heirloom, Honeycrisp, blah, 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 spiced apples. It's not your traditional spiced apple, which is good. It is unique. To me, it's like, there's a little bit of I want to say it's a smoked wood. They had, I want to say in 2013, there was Applewood Bonfire, which I did love. It was a one and done, never came back to my knowledge, but that was more bonfire and more embers and more true wood. This is almost like, again, the bark of a spice that is slightly charred, ever so slightly. But there's that fresh cinnamon bark in the background. It's not your red hot cinnamon. It's not your holiday cinnamon. Don't be turned off by this if you don't like cinnamon, like give this a chance, because I bet you a lot of folks may not think of it as cinnamon, but there's some sort of wood or spice in the background there. It could even be something that we are not super familiar with. You know, there's so many herbs and botanicals that are used in fine home fragrance and fine fragrance that we don't really know off the top of our heads as traditional scents that we're used to smelling that could be part of this. It's like almost some of that sharp sweetness that you get from like a musky patchouli. I don't think this is apple patchouli necessarily, but there's a little bit of that kind of spicy. And I'm not sure if it's from a leaf or if that's from a bark or from a root, but a spiciness, but a very authentic, fresh spiciness that I'm really loving with that super sweet apple. I'm happy to see the Cider Lane apple appear here versus that Honey Crisp. That's just like a mushy, not rotten apple, but just an apple scent that I don't like that they've used for many years. This one is the Cider Lane apple with that background of a spicy, woody herbal green, but it's like 60, 70% the apple. So give this a try. I really love this. I have not burned it yet. I'm going to burn it. This may be one that I end up stocking up on because on first sniff, I really, really enjoy it. Then we'll move along. Let's do a single wick here. So I used a reward on this one, but I was happy to see that this was not an online exclusive, at least in the single wick this year, and that is the Pumpkin Peanut Brittle. Notes on this one: crunchy caramel brittle, salty peanuts, and toasted pumpkin seeds. This is a fragrance that I only kind of really started digging a couple of years ago, and I've been burning it consistently since then. I will say one thing though. I know, folks, we've talked a lot about sort of the fishy lids, and I think Kent from the Candle Channel mentioned some fishy lids in a couple of the fall collections when he's purchased them. With this one, I wouldn't call it a fishy lid, but it is musty. And I don't know if it's the lid, I don't know if it's the vessel, I don't know if it's actually something that's settled on the surface of the wax, but it smells like if you left towels in the washing machine too long, 2-3 days, you come back and there's mold starting, where it's just like that really musty, that sharp, musty scent, to the point where I almost don't want to put in my nose in this. It is very much the Pumpkin Peanut Brittle fragrance, but there's something with this that I'm hoping after first burn goes away. I actually wiped the outside of this and the outside of the lid with rubbing alcohol. I didn't touch the surface of the wax. That didn't get rid of the mustiness, so not sure where it's coming from, but I really enjoy the Pumpkin Peanut Brittle. You can look in my previous reviews for a little bit more in-depth in this, but it is really that crunchy, toasty, nutty, sweet, but not cloying, not ooey gooey, that crunch of the brittle, appropriately named, with some really umami flavors in there as well. Enjoy that one, very, very unique. Then we've got 3 from the Treats collection, but before we dig into that, I will just do one from the core White Barn collection, and that is Cinnamon Spice Vanilla. As we can see, this is the fall version of the White Barn core collection. Just a little bit of a shimmer sparkle to the opaque jars, and the label here having a little bit of that gold leaf in a leaf pattern kind of frame around the name and label there. Notes on this one: fresh ground cinnamon, sugar crystals, and Tahitian vanilla bean. This one is the classic. It is the OG cinnamon sugar donut, launched in 2011 under Slacken & Co. with Bath & Body Works. I don't think they've really tweaked it much at all. Maybe just the oils, the suppliers, formulations get tweaked a bit, but as far as what this is supposed to smell like and what it does smell like, very straightforward. Unlike, say, Cranberry Woods, which really seems like almost a new fragrance entirely the past 3 to 5 years, where it went from a deep, dark, woodsy, purple fruit, dried, incredible fragrance to now like cranberry ocean spray with just a little hint of spice. It's really a shame what they did to that fragrance. This one though, happily, though the name is more straightforward as Cinnamon Spice Vanilla, it is that cinnamon sugar donut. You have the crunchy sugar crystals, you have that true soft cinnamon, like a Ceylon cinnamon. It's not so much your red hot cinnamon, your candied cinnamon. And though they don't mention it in here, you do still get that really strong fried cake donut, like you are, at a very idyllic apple orchard or pumpkin farm, and you're going to the little barn and they're doing the cider donuts. This isn't cider donut, so let me take that back because there's no apple in this, but a cinnamon sugar donut, which is, very, very similar to the cider donuts that often those places will have, because you do have that crunchy, fried gourmand bake note. And this is just something where I bought it because I was trying to figure out the right pricing to get the best deal as far as getting close to that 100 mark. And this is one that I will burn, not quite year round, but in the summer, certainly in the morning when you're having your coffee, you want something a little bit sweet. This is a beautiful cinnamon vanilla fragrance. So good to grab this one every year. Now digging into the Sweet Treats collection. I'm not sure if it's Fall Treats collection, what the official name is. So let's start with freshly brewed coffee. Talking about the aesthetics here, one thing I will say is The first two collections we went through here, kind of the opaque jars that have a label, sometimes different lids, usually more White Barn, their retail is $26.95, which we have seen for a bit. The past year or so, any clear jar, colored wax, and more simplistic non-full wrap labels typically have been $24.95, although now we are seeing $25.95 for fall. Not a big shocker, but worth noting. This art direction, I am not a fan of. I think it works okay for some of the labels with some of the imagery and wax color, for others not so much. But as I think Kent, the Candle Channel, said in one of his lives, or someone in one of his lives may have mentioned, it really, to me, reads as kind of like 2009 Vera Bradley, those soft kind of duffel bags where there are lots of paisleys and doodles, or like adult coloring book sort of doodles, and sort of 70s-esque, and just, little twirls and whirls, and, not fleur-de-lis, but just little items. And it's not my style. I don't like it for the most part. It's fine for this one. It has a leaf on it, but I don't think they look great. But freshly brewed coffee, I was excited to first hear this. Notes on this one, well, they're not giving us notes. They're giving us sort of the story like they used to have on their labels in like 2012 to maybe 15, before they just went to a list of notes. And this is saying, enjoy the room-filling aroma of fresh coffee beans as you pour yourself a cup of ambition. Okay, there are a couple weird things about this. Number one, the fact that they're just using sort of that scent story versus every other candle is the list of notes. Also, it's like written as a sentence, but every word is capitalized, which I think is just weird. So if it's gonna be a sentence, make it a sentence. And as you pour yourself a cup of ambition. Okay, so we're taking a line from like 9 to 5 by Dolly Parton. Like, what? It's just, like, who did that copy and who approved it? That's so random. It's like it was a placeholder and they forgot to get rid of it. I don't know. But they're not telling us the notes. And I think at this point, many folks know why. And that is, this is just a repackage of Paris Cafe. Now, I will say, I was hopeful that this was going to be Espresso Bar from the 2012 Italian collection, which I've talked a lot about, which you can see the review here if you want to look at it. Espresso Bar was kind of like, it reminded me of when I was a kid and you went into just those gourmet, like coffee bean shops in the mall or in gallerias and things like that, where they might sell some brewed coffee and they would have walls and walls of flavored coffee beans for people to purchase, to brew at home, and maybe some candy, like little confectionery stuff. And Espresso Bar really smelled a lot like that because it was your coffee bean. There was a little bit of like a milky foam, but it wasn't too super sweet. It was pretty straightforward. It was really, really nice. It was kind of replaced by Paris Cafe, which to me I've never really enjoyed because it does have a true coffee scent, which they've done some whipped coffees and things where there's little to no actual coffee scent, which is ridiculous. And their pink lavender and espresso, where's the coffee in that? Like, so little coffee in so many other fragrances. So Paris Cafe does have a good hit of coffee, but it also has initially, I don't know if it still says this on the label typically, but it had this like brioche toast note, which, okay, so you've got, brioche toast is really nice. And I'm sure a Paris Cafe could have some brioche bread, but to me, it smelled burnt, like burnt toast mixed with borderline burnt roasted coffee. I actually have never purchased Paris Cafe. I've almost purchased it a couple of times because I've really been craving a coffee scent, and I have not. This is straightforward, however, Paris Cafe. And I purchased it because I just really want a coffee scent, and I've grown accustomed to sniffing it in stores and not hating the burnt toast note in it. It really is, I would say, a good hit of probably like milk foam, not particularly sweet, which is fine. I don't want it to be sugary. It's not really vanilla, but like a milk foam, steamed milk, some really kind of bitter coffee, and that burnt brioche toast, that buttery toast that is burnt. So everyone knows Paris Cafe. I think I'm disappointed just because call it Paris Cafe or put that in a core collection, but don't give us freshly brewed coffee when it's so clearly a fragrance that is not like it was a one and done. Paris Cafe was 3 years ago and never came back. No, it's out all the time in the core collection. There's probably still the core White Barn collection Paris Cafe is sitting around from the past year in many stores. Then we get over to Pumpkin Cinnamon Bun. I don't mind patterns and things, but I just don't like all the doodling of this one. And for a Pumpkin Cinnamon Bun, this has like what looks like, I don't know, tulips and some leaves and just little, sea sprays of confetti. These little like feathery looking things that are reminiscent of like peacocks or something. And there's nothing autumnal about this to me other than the colors, certainly nothing gourmand or pumpkin or cinnamon bun. Notes on this one: warm cinnamon roll, pumpkin spice, and vanilla frosting. Pumpkin Cinnamon Bun first came out, I want to say test 2013 or 2015 when they had a huge pumpkin collection. Again, a lot of time their pumpkin collection has pumpkin in the name for everything, but not necessarily in the fragrance itself. But, you know, there's been pumpkin sugar cookie, pumpkin milkshake, pumpkin cinnamon bun. I actually did review the 2013 pumpkin cinnamon bun, which if you want to see that video, you can check it out here. I haven't watched the review to see if my nose is still smelling the same thing, but I remember at the time I didn't like it. I think that the issue with this, and I might have even returned it, the issue with this one was this might have been one of those pumpkin candles where once burning, people would say it would just smell weird or off or like feet or just like cheesy. Like sometimes the sour milk or cheesecake notes that come out in some of the gourmands over the years, usually a fall gourmand with Bath & Body Works. And so that 2014 one, I do believe I exchanged. It was 2014, not 2013. I do believe I exchanged. Wasn't a fan of it then, but let's get my nose in this now. It's been, 9 years. See if they've like corrected the formula. And this one is unique in one strong way, and that is yeast. This smells like yeasted dough, which a really nice cinnamon bun is that really puffy yeasted dough that you turn into that bun or that roll. Certainly there's no pumpkin in this. Like there's no pumpkin glaze, there's no pumpkin filling. This is the thing where anything spiced is supposed to be pumpkin or autumnal. Like there's not pumpkin in this. This is cinnamon bun, flat out. However, I don't really even get much cinnamon. Like maybe the tiniest bit. Like if you're going to like a crappy bakery in the mall that doesn't put enough filling in, or it's just like artificially flavored and there's not enough true cinnamon in it. Like there might be some filling, some goo in here, some sugary, brown sugar, some cinnamon, some butter. Yeah, absolutely. But it's not a lot of cinnamon in this. But I do get the bun, that yeasted dough, and I suppose that vanilla frosting, yep, also there. Leans a little bit artificial. I prefer more of like a glaze versus a frosting. And I get some of that. So there's that vanilla frosting, let's call it. The primary note in this really is that yeasted dough, which to me does make it authentic because they could say cinnamon bun or cinnamon cupcake, or they could, interchange baked items very often in gourmand candles, but not with this they couldn't, because it very much is a yeasted dough, which would not work for a cupcake or a scone or a cookie or what have you. And it reminds me a little bit of the yeast note in, what was it, Campfire Donut. There was that donut fragrance that was around for a couple of years, maybe not for the past 2 or 3 years though, but like 2016 or 17 through 2020 maybe, throughout the seasons. But it really smelled less like the crunchy, cakey, fried cinnamon sugar donut, and more so a really yeasted batter donut. And that is very similar to this. I actually wish I still had that so I could do a side-by-side comparison, because the primary reason for me for trying this is that authentic yeasted bun with that vanilla glaze on it. So we'll see if I like this one burning. I'm a little concerned that it could get murky and funky smelling, but I will give it a shot. Figured I would branch out into the Gourmand's bakery this year at Bath & Body Works. And then finally, saving the absolute best for last, I love this fragrance for 2 reasons. 1, the actual scent itself, and 2, at this point, because it is now 11 years since I first sniffed it, it is very much the nostalgia factor for me, which again, scent memory, I always say, scents take you to a mood, moment, memory, space, place, or time. And this gives me those memories, that space and that place, and that is Blueberry Pumpkin Patch. Now for this one, I love that medium deep blue, like lake blueberry blue. There's a cupcake on here. This is not a cupcake in my mind, but at least it's a gourmand and something baked on here. And all those just like those little paisley, those little twirls and whirls. Still don't like it, but it's fine. I'm just so happy this is back. Notes on this one: farm fresh blueberries, ripe pumpkin, and autumn spice. Now I will withhold full judgment on this one because I know at least this one, if not others, I'll be doing a separate video, in-depth sniff and comparison review, because I love it. There's plenty to compare it to, and I still have the original test version of this that came out in 2012, which if you do want to see a preview, you can actually watch that video from 11 years ago here, where I talked about Blueberry Pumpkin Patch, Chocolate Bacon Cupcake, Toffee Glazed Popcorn, and Farm Apple Cookie. And those were a late fall test where most of them did not actually go wide that year. They launched, I think, 1 or 2 of them perhaps, and the following year in 2013, we saw a Blue Wax Blueberry Pumpkin Patch come out. And then literally in 10 years, it has not come back in this name or any other name. So I'm thrilled that it is back. And it smells exactly the same, which it's like they didn't tweak it. It's as if they had the oils on the shelf and they were just ready to go. I love this so much, I really do. For me, the headline I would give on this one is It is like a blueberry compote, but, and this is very specific, and this might be really good or very bad, depending on your opinions. It is like the filling that artificially colored, artificially flavored goo in a blueberry Pop-Tart. It is that intense, concentrated, not farm fresh by any means, blueberry filling, but still an airiness. So it's almost like you get a little bit of that like powderiness from the skin of a blueberry. So maybe I take that back. I don't know. It's almost like the blueberry filling mixed with a little bit of fresh blueberries as well. Not really anything as far as like a gourmand baked good, like a cupcake or something like that, because it doesn't smell like a Pop-Tart fully. It's just that that filling that I get. Pumpkin, I don't think so. This is, unless there's a little bit of creaminess from like the gourd, aspect, the squash aspect of a pumpkin, the meat, maybe, but I don't think so. There is a nice autumn spice in here. It's hard to put my nose on it because it's not your generic nutmeg, cinnamon, allspice, clove, autumnal spices that you get in most candles or like the craft store blend, that kind of thing. But it is absolutely spiced. So I will go back, I'll look at my old video, I wanna see what I said then, and I'll do an in-depth comparison review side by side with the old one and really go deep into this one and kind of play you some of the old clips. If you don't watch it now, you can watch it when I do the solo video for this candle. But I love it. I bought 2 of them. I have one burning downstairs right now. It's just such a true blueberry filling with an airiness and a bit of that spice, but it's like a refreshing spice to me. It's not overwhelming. Anyhow, that is my, I guess I've got a little bit more in depth than I wanted to. So this is my not as long as usual, hopefully, first impressions haul and in-depth sniff overview, frankly, of the early fall 2023 collections from Bath & Body Works White Barn Candle Company. Please stay tuned. Let me know which of these you'd like me to do in-depth sniff comparison reviews on, if any. You're gonna get Blueberry Pumpkin Patch whether you like it or not, but would be happy to do some on the others as well. And until next time, take care.